The mornings were always quiet in the Holt residence, like the house itself was too refined to allow anything as disruptive as chaos. Everything was spotless, too spotless. The curtains were perfectly aligned, the scent of Gareth's cologne lingered in every room, and the kitchen counter gleamed with unnatural precision. I stirred my coffee without tasting it. Across the table, Gareth scrolled through his phone, offering a practiced smile every few minutes. "You didn't sleep well," he said, not looking up. "I did," I lied. His eyes met mine, and the corners of his mouth lifted in that same familiar curve. It looked like love to anyone else. But his hand, when it reached across to touch my shoulder, gripped just a second too long, a fraction too tightly. I flinched inwardly. There was a crack in the wall by the fireplace. It hadn't been there before. I stared at it while Gareth talked about an upcoming board meeting, something about strategy and quarterly reports. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. The fissure seemed small, almost cosmetic, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. They say you don't notice a slow leak until the ceiling caves in, I thought. Have you ever sat in your own living room and felt like a stranger in someone else's dream? We arrived at St. Helena Medical Center just before noon. Dr. Rowan Pierce welcomed us in his usual warm, professional tone. His handshake was firm, his white coat crisp. Gareth chatted easily with him, the two exchanging friendly banter like old college buddies. Just a routine check, Gareth had told me in the car. Insurance stuff. Inside the exam room, the lights buzzed overhead. I sat quietly in the corner, flipping through an outdated magazine. Gareth lay back under the X-ray machine, cracking jokes about radiation and superheroes. Dr. Rowan smiled, at first. Then something shifted. He leaned toward the screen, his brow creasing as he adjusted the image. Silence. Gareth noticed. "Everything okay?" Dr. Rowan didn't answer right away. His fingers hovered over the controls. "Have you had any previous injuries to your ribs?" Gareth's eyes flicked to mine, then back to Rowan. "Couple of football accidents in college. Nothing serious." I felt it, the pressure in my hand. Gareth had reached over, squeezing my fingers tightly, too tightly. "Right," Rowan said, clearly unconvinced. The moment hung in the air like a held breath. I didn't know why I felt afraid, only that I did. Later, as Gareth stepped out to take a call, Dr. Rowan looked at me differently. "Ilara," he said softly. "Are you sure you're okay?" I blinked. My heart raced. Yes. Just tired. But the lie tasted bitter. Why did I say that? Why did I protect him when something in my gut screamed that I shouldn't? Dr. Rowan reached into his desk drawer and handed me a small card. On it, in his handwriting, were 6 simple words, "If you ever need to talk." I slipped it into my purse like it was contraband. Back home, the weight of the card tugged at my thoughts. I sat in the car for 10 minutes before going inside. Gareth was already in the kitchen, humming, chopping vegetables. "You okay?" he asked without turning. "Of course," I said. I held the card like it was a live wire. I wasn't ready to use it. Not yet. "And you? Have you ever ignored a warning sign because you didn't want to believe it was real?" That night, the house felt colder. Not in temperature, but in spirit. Gareth fell asleep quickly, his breathing steady. I stared at the ceiling. The crack above the bed had grown. Or maybe I'd just noticed it more. In the darkness, memory came like a thief. A bruise I couldn't remember getting. A message he said was from a client, but the name was saved under a strange emoji. Dinner with friends where he corrected me, subtly, but publicly. Little things. At the time, they felt like nothing. Tonight, they stacked up like dominoes. I looked at Gareth's sleeping face. Peaceful. Unbothered. Have I built my life on a lie? The thought wrapped around my throat like a vice. It wasn't the doctor's whisper that haunted me, it was the silence I'd kept for far too long. I didn't know then, but the crack in the wall would be the least of what would break. When we pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same. But something about the stillness clung to my skin like fog. I stepped out of the car, forcing a smile when Gareth glanced at me. His arm slipped around my waist as we walked inside, his touch lingering longer than necessary. "You should rest," he said. "I'll make us some tea." I nodded. Normalcy. I had to perform it. Upstairs, I peeled off my blouse, then reached for my pajamas. As I slipped the soft cotton over my head, my fingers caught on something hard nestled in the collar seam. I paused. It was a tiny square, plastic, smooth, cold. I fished it out with trembling fingers. A tracker. My breath stopped. A flood of images rushed in, Gareth's questions I'd never voiced, the way he'd show up without being told where I was. The chill I felt at the clinic hadn't left me. How long had this been sewn into my clothes? Was it just the one? Was I being watched by more than just him? I sat on the edge of the bed, the device in my palm, my mind screaming without sound. Ever had that moment when you realized someone knew more about you than you ever told them? I flushed the device down the toilet. Watched it swirl away like something dark and nameless. My hands shook. I told myself it was adrenaline, but it felt like betrayal sinking into my bones. I washed my face and tried to breathe. Downstairs, Gareth called up, "Do you want honey in your tea?" Yes, I lied. Later that night, in bed with the lights off and Gareth's breathing rhythmic beside me, my phone vibrated. Just once. I turned it face up. Unknown number. The message read, "He knows you're planning to leave." My spine locked. I hadn't said it out loud. Not to anyone. I hadn't written it in a journal. I hadn't even whispered it in the dark. Except that one time, weeks ago, when I Googled divorce attorney Portsmouth on Gareth's office computer. He'd walked in. Said nothing. Just stared at the screen for 2 seconds longer than he should have. The memory sickened me now. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. I felt Gareth shift beside me. "What are you hiding?" he asked softly. The words cut through the quiet like a scalpel. I jumped. Nothing. Just checking tomorrow's groceries. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. "Order whatever you need," he said, his smile tight. "You deserve to be comfortable." Then he got up and left the room. I stared at the door for a full minute before moving. I got out of bed slowly, barefoot, careful not to make a sound. Kneeling, I pulled back the edge of the rug near my nightstand and slid my fingers underneath. There it was. Another device. This one was different, rounder, blinking red. I didn't touch it. Just stared. This wasn't love. This was surveillance dressed up as concern. I sat back on my heels, every muscle in my body coiled tight. And for the first time, I imagined life without Gareth. The frightening thing? It didn't terrify me as much as staying did. If your partner knew every private thought you had, would they still love you, or use it against you? I lay awake for hours. The ceiling felt lower. the walls closer. Every creak in the floorboard sounded like a warning. At 3:07 a.m., I crept into the bathroom. The light above the mirror flickered, once, twice, before steadying. It looked like it wanted to go out but wasn't quite allowed. I stared at myself. Skin pale. Eyes bloodshot. "Who are you becoming, Elara?" I whispered. I slid the wedding ring from my finger. My hand felt lighter. My heart heavier. I placed the ring on the edge of the sink. Watched it catch the light. But I didn't walk away. Not yet. I told myself I'd wait for the right moment to run. But deep down, I knew there'd never be a safe moment. Only now or never. The late afternoon light slanted in through the tall windows, golden and soft, giving everything a deceptive glow of warmth. Gareth kissed my cheek and stepped out for a business dinner, his cologne lingering in the air like a warning. As the door closed, I moved slowly through the living room, a duster in one hand, though I wasn't really cleaning. I was searching. Something felt off, had for days, but today I was ready to notice. On the shelf near the fireplace, a photo frame sat slightly askew. I straightened it, fingers pausing as I felt something taped to the back. A folded scrap of paper. I unfolded it with care. The ink was faded, the handwriting rushed. She never left. He made sure of it. I stared at the words until they blurred. My breath caught. Someone else had been here. And they hadn't left, not because they didn't want to. Because they couldn't. I moved through the house like I'd been blind before and only now could see. The perfect rows of books, the cleaned-out drawers, the orderly closets, what was hidden beneath all that order? In the study, I found a drawer that didn't open. Locked. I waited until nightfall. Garrett's blazer hung over the armchair in our bedroom. I slipped my hand into the inside pocket and found the key. My hand didn't even shake. Ever felt like you were the latest chapter in someone else's unfinished story? The attic door creaked open with a long groan, dust floating up like smoke. I climbed slowly, each step adding weight to my chest. It was cold and musty, lit only by a naked bulb swinging slightly from the low ceiling. I sifted through boxes labeled with mundane things, holiday, books, kitchen. Then I saw it. A plain box marked, maintenance records. Inside, not tools or receipts, but papers. Files. Names. Photos. One name was paperclipped to a bundle, Lillian Boyd. Her face stared back at me from a faded photo. She was standing in what looked like the same hallway I now walked every day. Behind her, the same mirror still hanging in our foyer. I sat down hard on the wooden floor. Police report, domestic disturbance. Therapy notes, anxiety. Reports of emotional manipulation. Death certificate, accidental fall. I felt bile rise in my throat. Lillian had lived here. Gareth never told me he owned this house before. And now she was gone. I remembered a night early in our marriage, Gareth laughing over a glass of wine. "This house keeps its secrets," he'd said. It wasn't funny now. It was a threat dressed up as charm. I called my mother that night. Marion answered on the third ring. "Do you know anything about this house's history?" I asked, voice sharp. She paused. "Why are you asking?" "There was a woman. Before me. Something happened to her." "Elara," she sighed. "You're making things worse by digging. So you do know." She didn't deny it. "Gareth gave your father a loan when the business was failing. He didn't have to. He saved us. I swallowed hard. And the price was me, wasn't it? You're his wife. That's a good thing. You're provided for. I'm trapped. You're overreacting. I found a file. She died here. Marion's tone went cold. Better a husband with secrets than a daughter with a scandal. I hung up before I could scream. Then I called Caleb. My brother was silent for a long time. He paid Dad's debt, Caleb said finally. You think that was charity? My stomach turned. Even they had known. My family had sold me to a man who kept his secrets behind drywall and file folders. Back in our bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the photo of Lillian. She had eyes like mine. I stared at the wedding photo on the nightstand. My smile in it looked fake now. Like it had always been. I picked up the frame and hurled it against the wall. Glass shattered. The image split clean down the middle. This wasn't about escape anymore. This was about justice. I burned the note from behind the frame. But I kept Lillian's picture. She wouldn't be forgotten. I held the photo to my chest. Not this time. Not again. I thought I was the first to feel this way. Turns out, I'm just the first to fight back. The house was too quiet that night. The kind of quiet that hums, pressing against your ribs until it feels like the air itself is listening. I stood outside the basement door, hand hovering over the knob. There was a sound, soft, rhythmic, like something shifting on its own. A thump, faint and hollow. I'd walked past this door 1,000 times, but tonight I heard it. Really heard it. How many times did I walk past here, unaware? I pulled the key I'd lifted from Garrett's belt loop earlier that day and slid it into the lock. It turned easily. The basement smelled of damp concrete and something metallic. I descended slowly, flashlight trembling in my hand. Dust motes swirled like ghosts in the beam. At first glance, it looked ordinary: storage boxes, an old treadmill, a set of suitcases. But one of them, half unzipped, caught my attention. Inside were folded clothes, a woman's scarf, and a small jacket, child-sized. I didn't recognize it. I reached deeper and found a phone wrapped in plastic. The screen flickered to life when I pressed it. A single contact glowed at the top, 0000. I opened the call log. Every entry said the same thing: you will not leave. The flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled across the floor. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly felt your life was half a lie? The creak of a floorboard behind me froze me in place. Late night, Ilara? Garrett's voice was calm, but something in it vibrated with quiet menace. He stood in the shadows at the bottom of the stairs, hands in his pockets, eyes glinting. I was cleaning, I said, my voice thin. He nodded toward the suitcase. Find something interesting? I held up the little jacket. Who does this belong to? He smiled faintly. You really shouldn't be down here. Before I could answer, he stepped forward, plucked the jacket from my hand, and draped it over his arm. Let's go upstairs, he said lightly. We'll talk about this like adults. When we reached the dining room, Marion and Caleb were already there, mid-meal. Gareth poured himself wine as if nothing had happened. Ilara's been exploring, he said, a small laugh escaping him. She thinks I'm hiding ghosts. I looked at my mother, at her still face. Do you know about this? About the woman before me? Marion's fork paused midair, but she said nothing. Who is that child? I demanded, voice shaking. And where's my passport, Gareth? Caleb looked up, pale. Illyra. Gareth cut him off with a chuckle. You're imagining things. Maybe you've been spending too much time alone. But something in my gut told me I was done being silent. This dinner, this theater of normalcy, this was my breaking point. I stared at him across the table, every piece of me hardening into resolve. This moment, this dinner, is my turning point. I retreated to the guest room, locking the door behind me. My heart hammered like a trapped bird. I pulled a duffel bag from under the bed and began to pack, cash from my desk, a change of clothes, my phone charger. Then, carefully, I slid Aria's favorite book between the folds of fabric. It smelled faintly of vanilla and childhood. I sat on the edge of the bed, forcing my breathing to slow. On the nightstand, I had placed one of the devices I'd found. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through its message log. Each entry was time-stamped. Dozens of lines. The same words over and over. She stays. She stays. She stays. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't afford noise. I turned on my laptop, took a photo of the device, and typed a single email to Dr. Rowan. Subject, urgent. I need help. Please. I attached the photo and hit send. The moment the whoosh of the email leaving filled the air, I felt lighter, and yet terrified. I turned off the light and sat still in the dark, the hum of the refrigerator faint downstairs, the house holding its breath. Then came the sound. A slow creak. The basement door. Opening. On its own. Seattle greeted Romy with drizzle and the faint scent of cedar and salt from the nearby Puget Sound. She stepped off the shuttle, shoulders stiff but determination hardening with each step toward the taxi that would take her to the address Dr. Fry had given her. The city hummed around her, its anonymity a cloak she desperately needed. She dialed the number again, the line crackling until a calm voice answered, Marla Venn. The meeting was at a modest law office tucked between a cafe and a bookstore. When Romy entered, she froze for a split second, recognizing something in Marla's posture, a quiet, measured poise that had once been absent in a girl she remembered from school hallways, bullied and overlooked for her looks. Time had carved strength and precision into Marla, yet there was caution in her gaze. Trust wasn't granted here, it had to be earned, and Romy knew this all too well. She explained her flight from Asheville, the single X-ray she carried, and the hollow emptiness of leaving everything behind. Marla listened, nodding slowly, acknowledging both the fragility and the fire in Romy's words. In Marla's office, papers spread across a polished wooden table, Romy watched her prenuptial agreement as Marla pointed out the fine print, a clause stripping Romy of all marital assets if she initiated divorce. The words felt like a slap she had never expected, the ink a reminder of how many battles she had unknowingly signed herself into. These contracts are weapons. Not agreements, Marla said, voice steady. Romy's stomach churned. She had signed what she thought was a document of protection, only to realize it was a cage. I signed to surrender without knowing I was at war, she murmured, almost to herself. Together, they began to chart a strategy, not from fear, but from evidence, from the hard truth of cold ink and law. A call from Dr. Fry interrupted the day. The doctor's voice was calm yet deliberate, carrying weight beyond mere concern. Fry confessed a history entwined with Romy's mother, Illyra, revealing a disturbing pattern. Years ago, Illyra had manipulated hospital records, turning a blind eye to a predator in the ward to preserve her family's image. Fry's words sank in, chilling Romy to her core. What I saw in your X-ray, it mirrored something from decades ago. Generations of silence, of carefully engineered protection of appearances at the expense of truth, began to coalesce into a tangible pattern Romy could now see and feel. Later, the three women convened at a quiet, dimly lit diner, a neutral ground for plotting a counterattack against years of hidden injustices. Each represented a different facet of endurance: Romy, the newest survivor; Marla, a peer who had grown into resilience; and Fry, a professional tethered to conscience and regret. Romy proposed a methodical plan, gathering tangible proof, legal evidence, and documented accounts rather than relying on fractured memories. Marla nodded, affirming the need for records over stories, while Fry committed to locating archived medical files under aliases once employed in the hospital. The alliance, though tentative, formed around a common goal: not only liberation from Nolan's control but also exposing a systemic pattern of family and institutional manipulation. As Romy left the diner, her heart still thrumming from strategy and revelation, her burner phone buzzed violently. A private number flashed across the screen, displaying a photograph: her boarding pass to Seattle, taken from some hidden vantage. The caption sent chills racing down her spine: "You think you're safe? You're wrong." She froze, the weight of the message pressing against her ribs. She wasn't just being watched anymore, she was being hunted. The city streets blurred past her as she processed the implications, mind sharp, adrenaline coursing, knowing that the storm she fled had merely shifted its center of gravity toward her. The morning air in Seattle carried the faint scent of rain and wet asphalt as Romy walked into Marla's office, clutching her coffee like a lifeline. Her palms still trembled, a reminder of the tension from the night before, the anonymous message that had set her heart racing. Marla moved quickly, setting up the broadcast equipment with the precision of someone who had done this before, her expression tight with concentration. "We're going live with the file," she said. "When the X-ray, the records, and the contracts merge, nobody stops watching." On the screen, Dr. Fry's face appeared from Asheville, calm but resolute. Romy uploaded the X-ray, the tampered medical files, every proof she had accumulated. Her inner voice urged her forward: "This isn't about proving it to them, it's about forcing them to see it." She glanced at Marla, then to the screen, a question forming for anyone who might understand: if your truth had been locked away, would you shatter the door or slip quietly out? By mid-morning, her burner phone erupted with notifications. Headlines rolled in: breaking, Calden Strathmore family under investigation. The ticker scrolled faster than her heartbeat, naming her as the woman who had escaped a legacy of abuse. She imagined her mother, Alira, reading it, the cool mask she always wore finally cracking. A bittersweet surge of liberation and residual pain swept through Romy. Marla instructed methodically: "Now we freeze the money. We make them react, not us." She paced the room, feeling the adrenaline spike as the first responses hit, some supportive, some skeptical, all acknowledging the disruption she had caused. She whispered a question to herself and, by extension, to any observer: have you ever witnessed a small act trigger a headline? What did you do in the ripple that followed? Early afternoon brought an unexpected interruption. Her burner phone rang, number masked, and she answered, holding her ground as Nolan's calm, measured voice slithered through. "You think you won, Romy? The game's just begun." He revealed his countermeasures, a hired PR firm, carefully crafting his narrative, mobilizing influence to counter her revelations. In that moment, he transformed before her mental eyes from a husband to an adversary. Control didn't escape him, it evolved, she thought, the truth settling like stones in her chest. Marla leaned over, steadying the urgency in her own voice. "He's cornered and dangerous. We expected fear, he feels threat." Romy nodded, inhaled, and let the clarity of her resolve crystallize. "Then we'll show him what fear looks like when you're backed by truth." Evening found Romy in a rented apartment, watching news clips of the fallout. Nolan's public image wavered, yet he maintained a practiced smile, an eerie counterpoint to the chaos. She realized the broadcast had done more than attract attention, it had unspooled panic among those who thought themselves untouchable. Memories flickered unbidden, Blaine's cold laughter at family dinners, the subtle diminishment of her presence. Now, instead of recoiling, Romy felt a quiet fire ignite. She began compiling her own media archive, recordings, copies of files, secure communications, potential safe houses. A reflection to any watcher, or perhaps to herself: when the spotlight turns on you, do you run from it, or step into it? Nightfall brought the first tangible proof that her ripple had reached the right ears. Outside, in the street where she had once lived in Asheville, the familiar porch light remained off. Her burner phone buzzed again, a forwarded video clip. Her mother and sister appeared on the screen, carrying boxes from the house, silence replacing confrontation. Romy's breath caught, their retreat spoke louder than words. She whispered into the night, heart thrumming, they're walking away instead of talking. The storm she had created was no longer theoretical, it was moving, expanding, reaching home, leaving her with both dread and determination, the quiet storm she had summoned now fully awake. The office was dim, lit only by the desk lamp that cast Evelyn Shore's face in harsh shadows. My fingers trembled, not from fear anymore, but anticipation. She pressed play on the audio file. A voice filled the room. Cold. Methodical. Gareth Holt. She came too close. Lillian wasn't meant to dig. I warned her. My breath hitched. Another pause. A click. Then his voice again. They believe what I write. Money talks. Truth doesn't. That's why I document. Always. The audio ended in a hiss. Evelyn's gaze didn't flinch. You're the first woman to hear this. The silence that followed was heavier than the recording. I stared at the floor, my jaw clenched. Justice isn't silent, I said, barely above a whisper. It speaks in recordings, in the truth you can't erase. The walls of Gareth's empire cracked in my mind, but in this office, the world felt like a box closing in. What do we do now? I asked. Evelyn leaned forward, voice like steel. We strike. Have you ever held someone's words against them and realized silence was their most dangerous weapon? The house was quiet when I returned. Too quiet. The hum of hidden surveillance systems buzzed faintly beneath the walls. I didn't flinch anymore, I knew he was always watching. In Gareth's study, I opened the drawer behind the false panel. Inside was a folder labeled Support Disbursements. Invoices, tens of thousands of dollars, made out to Marion Quinn and Caleb Quinn. The listed reason? Family Stabilization Services. They weren't keeping the peace. They were bought. My fingers hovered over my phone. I texted Caleb, when did I become collateral? Minutes passed. Then, I'm sorry. I couldn't stop it. Couldn't or wouldn't. I dialed Gareth. He answered on the second ring. You paid them, I said flatly. You sold me. His voice was steady. You're free to leave, Ilara. But you know the cost. I didn't respond. I ended the call. In that moment, rage became something sharper, strategy. The days of reacting were over. I sat on the floor of the guest bedroom, laptop open, folders spread out. I saved the audio file of Gareth's confession, attached scanned copies of the invoices, and uploaded everything to the cloud, an external drive, and emailed it to Evelyn. Then I opened a new message. Nadia Reeves, I found your name in the file. Are you ready to speak? Her reply came seconds later, I've waited longer than you can imagine. For years, I had been the one who nodded, smiled, made excuses. Not anymore. When I returned home, Gareth met me at the door, his usual smug calm fixed like a mask. You've become clever, he said. I smiled faintly. No. Just smarter than I was. I slipped an extra house key into my purse. One step ahead. That's all I needed. He didn't follow me. Not yet. He didn't need to. He knew. And I knew, too. The house settled into nighttime stillness. I lay in bed, eyes on the hallway beyond our bedroom door. Gareth's silhouette moved past the light, slow and deliberate. I whispered, "You thought you knew me. You didn't know what I was building." My phone buzzed. A message from Evelyn, "Tonight we go live. Are you ready?" I stared at the screen. In that moment, I understood. There was no returning to silence. Only forward. Only fire. I woke before dawn, the sky a dim wash of gray over Portsmouth. My chest felt tight, not from fear but from purpose. On the table beside me lay the thumb drive, the one that held Gareth's confession, the invoices, the photos, the names. It pulsed in my mind like a heartbeat I couldn't silence. Evelyn's voice came through the phone, calm but clipped. "We have everything. Names, dates, payoffs. Victims. This is the moment." I stared at the window, the reflection of my own eyes hollow but determined. "Tomorrow we go public," I said. She didn't answer right away. "Tomorrow," she finally confirmed. "And Alara, once it starts, there's no stopping it." On the counter sat the photograph I had found, the one from the suitcase. Aria's face, innocent and unknowing. The only pure thing left in a house full of secrets. "No more running," I whispered. "It ends tonight." Have you ever reached that point when you realize no one's coming to save you, so you do it yourself? Morning bled into chaos. By the time I arrived at Evelyn Shore's law office, the air outside buzzed with cameras and murmurs. News vans lined the street. The sky had cleared, but the light felt harsh, merciless. I wore plain clothes, no makeup, hair tied back. The thumb drive in my palm felt heavier than it should. Inside, Evelyn waited with Detective Ron Vega, his badge gleaming in the reflection of the conference room glass. "You're sure about this?" he asked. I nodded once. "Completely." Evelyn turned on the recorder, her tone sharp and formal. "For the record, this submission includes physical and digital evidence of financial misconduct, witness coercion, and homicide concealment." I placed the drive on the table. "This is what he built," I said. Walls of silence. Outside, I could hear the murmurs shift, the press catching wind, the tension thickening. Then, the screen behind us flickered to life. Gareth. Smiling. Composed. His voice broadcast live from his estate. "My wife is unwell," he said. These accusations, fabrications from a troubled mind. My fists tightened at my sides. Evelyn didn't move. She just stared at the monitor. I pulled the final piece from my bag, Lillian Boyd's handwritten journal. Pages frayed, ink faded. "He documented her fear," I said softly, and slid it across the table. Evelyn's lips parted, a rare flicker of emotion breaking through her control. The moment she handed the evidence to Vega, everything shifted. A news ticker scrolled across the screen, Holt Industries under federal investigation. Assets frozen by IRS and district attorney. The mask slipped from Gareth's face, only for a second, but it was enough. Cold rage turned to thunder in my veins. The house of cards was falling, and for once, I was the one who pushed. The aftermath came faster than I expected. By evening, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. Family statements, press calls, rumors multiplying like wildfire. I watched Marion's televised interview, her voice trembling as she said, "We didn't know. But her eyes betrayed her. She did. Caleb's silence spoke louder than any apology could. When I stepped outside, the air smelled of rain and metal. Ron Vega's call came through just as the first drops hit my skin. "Alara, you're safe for now. He's contained, but this isn't over." I looked up at the clouds, feeling the cold sting of water on my face. "It's enough for tonight." The press conference replayed on my phone. Nadia Reeves stood behind a microphone, her hands shaking but her voice steady. "I saw her in his hallway," she said. "I saw what he did." The audience gasped, a ripple of realization moving through the crowd. The archive of silence had shattered, and with it, Garrett's illusion of control. When I got home, the world felt quieter, like it was catching its breath. The lights in the kitchen glowed softly. On the fridge was Aria's drawing, a crayon sketch of us, holding hands beneath a sun too bright for the paper. Scrawled in her uneven letters, "Mom, I believe you now." My throat tightened. And then, from somewhere deep inside memory, Garrett's voice echoed, smooth, venomous. "You don't know what you started." I closed the door behind me, turned off the lights, and whispered into the dark, "I do now." I check Aria's backpack again, hands shaking slightly despite the calm I'm trying to project. Her stuffed bear, the one missing an eye but still her favorite, is tucked against the side. Our passports. The flight ticket. A snack she insisted on carrying herself. All there. I text Evelyn, in flight. "Do not call unless absolute emergency." Then I delete the thread and power the phone down. My heart thuds against my ribs like a caged thing, but I keep my steps measured as we move through the station. Garrett's voice still echoes in the corners of my mind. "You won't leave." I grip Aria's hand tighter and whisper, "Watch me." At Logan Airport, the world swirls around us in a blur of movement, travelers, announcements, hurried goodbyes. But I focus on staying ordinary. Smile when spoken to. Answer casually. Act like every other mother traveling with her child. We sit in the terminal, our gate posted and final call looming. Aria curls up beside me, head on my lap. "Mom," she whispers, "are we safe now?" I tuck a strand of her hair behind her ear, heart in my throat. "We're going somewhere new." Have you ever boarded a flight not just for a destination, but for a whole new life? Mid-air, the world turns quiet. The engine hums. The lights dim. The flight attendants pass with tired smiles and empty trays. I exhale slowly, shoulders finally beginning to drop from days of tension. But then the cabin lights flicker. Just once. A simple pulse of power. It shouldn't mean anything, but my body tightens instinctively. My trauma doesn't know we're in the air. I pull out my tablet and scroll through the encrypted email chain with Evelyn. All the files are still there, recordings, photos, Garrett's financial records, the statement from Lillian's journal. My voice inside whispers, "You're flying now, but the ground you left behind is still on fire." The phone, set to airplane mode, buzzes as soon as I flip it off for a moment to check. One new voicemail. The caller ID, Gareth. I don't listen. But the transcription shows the beginning, "You took the shortcut, Alara." But shortcuts cost more. I delete the message. Turn to Aria, now coloring a sky full of purple suns and blue trees. We're closer to safe than we've ever been. Outside the window, the clouds part. A burst of light filters through. On the screen in front of me, a headline scrolls beneath the news anchor, "Federal investigation into Gareth Holt expands. Assets frozen pending inquiry." And then another pop-up, "I escaped too," says Nadia Reeves, "and so can you." For the first time in days, I let a smile form fully. Not one born of caution, but of belief. We land just before sunset in California. The air outside the jetway is heavier, warmer. Humid. I breathe it in like it's a baptism. Aria stretches and yawns as we make our way to the baggage claim. She doesn't cling to me the way she used to in public places. She skips a little ahead, her pigtails bouncing. She looks like a girl who finally feels free. I pull out a worn notebook from my bag and sit on a bench outside the terminal, Aria beside me nibbling on a cracker. I begin writing. Dear future me, I begin. If you're reading this, it means you didn't let him win. This isn't a diary entry. It's a stake in the ground. A reminder that running was the first act. Living will be the second. I slide the photo of Lillian into the notebook, press it between the pages gently. You're safe now too, I whisper. Aria tugs on my sleeve. Look, Mom. She points at the sky. That cloud looks like a bear. It kind of does. We watch as the coastline fades behind us in the shuttle's rear view. I exhale, not with fear, but with release. The horizon ahead isn't the end. It's only the beginning. The safe house is quiet except for the low hum of electronics. 3 laptops glow in the dark, each showing a different window, news alerts, encrypted folders, a live chat with Evelyn and Detective Vega. The air smells faintly of burnt coffee and tension. Aria sits on the floor behind me, sketching on scrap paper. She holds it up proudly. Mom, you're my hero. The letters are uneven, some backward, but it hits harder than anything else tonight. I swallow the lump in my throat and touch her hair. Almost done, sweetheart. Just one more thing to fix. I turn back to the screen. Evelyn's face appears, pale but resolute. Are you ready? I nod. We go live tonight. Detective Vega's voice cuts in from another feed. We've cross-checked the recordings. The confessions, the surveillance payments, the offshore accounts, it's airtight. Then let's bring him down, I say. I cue up the 15-minute compilation. Garrett's voice plays over a black screen first, calm and cold. I document everything. Fear keeps them loyal. Then, clips flash, Lillian's photos, the financial records, statements from Nadia Reeves and others. I steady my breath and press record on my own camera. My name is Alara Quinn, I say, my voice steady. For years, I lived inside someone else's illusion. Tonight, I choose truth over fear. And I won't stop until it sets us all free. I look straight into the lens. If you're watching this and you think silence protects you, it doesn't. It protects them. I hit upload. Have you ever stood at the edge of truth, knowing that speaking it might burn down someone else's kingdom, and still press send? This isn't vengeance. It's accountability. The world reacts before dawn. News alerts light up my phone like fireworks. Gareth Holt under federal investigation. Holt family trust frozen. Victims speak out. I watch from the couch, wrapped in a blanket, Aria asleep against my side. On every channel, his face appears, confident, then confused, then quietly afraid. Marion's number flashes on my phone. I let it ring. I already know the conversation we'd have. She'd say it's gone too far. That we should stay quiet. But silence is her currency, not mine. On the television, Gareth holds a press conference. He looks smaller, thinner. His voice wavers. These allegations are unfounded, he insists. I will fight them in court. But his hands shake. The anchor's voice cuts in, the empire built on silence is finally hearing the voices. I stand by the window, watching the city lights shimmer like distant stars. The world is changing, even if just by inches. A new email pops up on my encrypted account. No sender name. Just one line, they know you took the proof, expect escalation. My pulse spikes, but I don't respond. Seconds later, a breaking update flashes across the news feed. Federal regulators freeze Holt Industries holdings. Assets seized. Major investors withdraw support. Garrett's throne is collapsing in real time. Arya stirs and opens her eyes. Mom, did you win? I pull her closer, resting my chin on her head. We started winning the moment we broke free. The weight of that truth feels heavier than victory itself. Morning comes softly, washing the California sky in pale gold. The world outside is alive again, birds, traffic, laughter somewhere distant. I sip lukewarm coffee and scroll through hundreds of messages, victims reaching out, strangers offering support, journalists requesting interviews. One subject line stands out, because of you, I left. I click it open and stare at the words until my eyes blur. Evelyn calls. Her voice carries the fatigue of a sleepless night. They're coming for Gareth next. You're safe now, for the moment. But your mission isn't finished. I glance at areas drawing pinned above the desk. Mommy free, Grandma sad. I murmur, we're rewriting everything. I open my notebook and write the words that have been circling in my head since this all began. If silence built his throne, my voice will dismantle it. This isn't just my story anymore. It's a blueprint. The next page reads, Foundation for Survivors of Coercion and Control, name pending. Living, I realize, is the long war after the short victory. I close the notebook, stand, and stretch. For the first time, my body feels like it belongs to me. Then I see it, through the thin curtain of the window. A black car idling across the street. The driver's face obscured. Engine running. The past has a way of following you, even after you've burned the bridge. I exhale slowly and whisper, let it come. I'm not running anymore. The wind off the Pacific smells different than anything I've ever known, salt and citrus and something clean, like breath after crying. I step out onto our coastal balcony, a chipped mug of coffee in one hand, and close my eyes. This is the first morning I haven't checked for shadows behind me. Arya dances barefoot along the porch boards, hair wild in the wind, laughing like the waves belong to her. I watch her spin, arms out, fearless. Her freedom is a mirror, one I finally recognize. They said I'd never leave, I whisper into the wind. But here we are. I remember a quote I once read scrawled on a waiting room wall, the only safe place is the one you make safe for yourself. I didn't understand it then. Now I do. Have you ever stood on a beach alone and felt something in your chest settle? Like peace wasn't just a possibility, but a place you walked into with both feet? The past still hums beneath the waves, but today, the horizon feels like mine. Areas at the kitchen table, coloring. She draws our new house with thick lines and big windows. No shadows, no fences. Just light. I sit across from her, opening the weathered journal that held so many voices, victims turned evidence, stories once silenced now spoken aloud. I flip through pages filled with fear and resolve. Every line reminds me why I fought. Marion's name flashes on my phone. I watch it ring, but I don't pick up. I don't need her validation anymore. That chapter closed when I chose myself. I turn to Arya. Mommy didn't used to believe she deserved this, I say quietly. Now I do. She looks up, puzzled, but smiles. Good, she says, and goes back to coloring. I feel the ache of guilt, years I didn't know how to save us. But also a pulse of gratitude for the woman I became when I finally did. Growth doesn't erase scars. It builds from them. We plant a garden together in the backyard, basil, cherry tomatoes, and lavender. Arya digs enthusiastically, dirt under her nails, laughter in her throat. Each seed is a promise. Roots forming where fear once lived. I tell her stories, age-appropriate versions, of the woman I used to be. There was a time I thought someone else held all the keys, I say. Now I know I do. She asks about her father. I pause, then kneel beside her. Some people make their choices, I say gently. And that's okay. But we made ours too. She nods, like that makes perfect sense, and goes back to digging. Later, I sit at the small desk near the window and begin a letter to Nadia Reeves, drafting a proposal for a foundation dedicated to survivors of coercion and control. A space not just for safety, but for rebuilding. For reclaiming. Arya, I ask, want to help name it? She thinks for a minute, then writes in bold letters, HARBOR. What does it stand for? I ask. She grins. Hope and real brave other roses. It doesn't need to make sense. It's perfect. My daughter didn't just get a mother back. She got one who sees the future now, and believes in it. Dusk settles in lavender hues over the water. The sky softens. The house smells of garlic and rosemary. I check my phone one last time before bed. A new message. No contact name. You did well. But the biggest fight is still ahead. My thumb hovers over the screen. Outside, Arya plays in the fading light, the last glow turning her hair gold. She waves at me through the window. I whisper to myself, steady and certain, then we'll be ready. The Pacific wind no longer carries warning, it carries welcome. I lean against the balcony railing, the same salt air brushing my face, but everything is different now. 1 year has passed since Arya and I stepped into this life, and still, I don't take the peace for granted. Below me, Arya calls out, holding up something small and green. Mom! Look! It sprouted! The first seed we planted together last spring, now alive, real, defiant against the odds. I nod, blinking against the wind. You did it, I say. She grins and returns to the garden, her laughter unguarded. Back inside, I look at the photo of Lillian Boyd I keep tucked into the edge of the mirror. Her smile has followed me across states, across the breaking point, across survival into purpose. I speak to the image softly. This was always about more than one of us. Maya Angelou's voice floats through memory, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. I exhale. The silence is over. Have you ever planted something hoping it would outlive you? Today, that hope takes root. Evelyn Shore's face fills my laptop screen as the launch countdown ticks down. The foundation's site is live, she says, her voice even, but I can tell she's proud. It's yours, Ilara. Your voice built it. The Quinn Initiative for Survivors of Covert Control launches with a mission, a team, a voice. I reread the founding statement, hands trembling slightly, silence birthed the monster. Truth must raise the air. I think of Gareth Holt, his name still making headlines, his empire dust. But what keeps me grounded isn't his downfall. It's the outreach data we've gathered. The safe houses funded. The voices we've helped lift. Arya peeks over my shoulder. Can I help with the logo again? She asks, holding up her sketchbook. She's drawn a phoenix rising from broken chains. Flames made of words. I swallow hard and nod. Exactly. Empowerment doesn't come as a burst, it comes as a rebuild. Every detail of this new life is a promise I'm keeping. Marion calls again. This time, I answer. I see who you've become, she says, voice measured. I listen, but I don't let it in. You missed the beginning of my fight, I reply. I'm writing the end now. We speak like distant relatives, linked, but no longer aligned. Later, Caleb texts, I'm trying to clean up my part. I write back, then start with truth. That's the only currency left between us. That evening, Nadia Reeves arrives, a quiet smile on her lips. I hug her tightly, unafraid. Your story saved mine, I say. She nods, eyes damp. And now it's saving others. Have you ever seen someone build a better world because you survived the worst of one? There's power in survival. But there's a legacy in speaking it. The sun dips low, golden light pouring through the windows as I close my laptop. The broadcast finished. Donor support strong. Survivor voices amplified. The logo Aria helped design now glows softly on the screen. The house is quiet. A knock at the door startles me. A man stands outside, dressed in neutral clothes, holding a white envelope marked, confidential, urgent. He doesn't speak. I glance at Aria curled on the couch, her book open on her lap. I step closer, and say, shall we answer it together? She nods. Because no matter what it is, this time, we open it on our terms.